It's not a Skyline Wagon. I can hear your balls churning from here.
An old Nissan Stagea, the one we drove, was practical, but not every engine block is magical.
I need peace and quiet from your Nissan Auto Filetio talk. I'm gonna go back to the AT for a bit.
Love Shack, baby, Love Shack.
I'm back.
Quit humping the floor.
Stop doing that move where you pull your cock up and roll on it. Yeah, there's one girl at the sleepover and you do what you do to get by. I get it, but knock it off.
This is not a Skyline Wagon. Unpierce your dick and get a job. Stop farting under your acolyte robe and light the damn candles.
This is the RB25DET.
I found your bullmaster and your mother and I want to have a talk with you about those comic books that open backwards.
Fine. The poverty spec and middle shelf Nissan Skylines did have the RB25DET, but never the Halo Skyline GTR. Saying the Nissan Stagea is a Skyline wagon is like saying a Toyota Cressida is a four-door Supra. The Toyota 7MGE is a fine 3-liter double-cam inline-6, but it's no 2J. If I were following that logic, then a Buick Roadmaster Estate is a Corvette wagon because it has a GMLT V8, same as a C4.
Not the same.
Manufacturers cross-pollinate engines all the time. Look, if one car has the same engine as a better car, it doesn't make the lesser car the same as the better car. Engine blocks aren't magical. I think it's people trying to pump up the resale value of their second-chair autos by association. If that's the game we're playing, then I'm going to call my AW11 a mid-engined AE86 when I sell it and gleam some of that sweet, sweet tofu tax. Nissan Stagea RS4. A 90s oddity that somehow stuck around longer than anybody expected. Sort of like Bare Naked Ladies or Waffle Crisp cereal. The RS4 comes with a 2,498 cubic centimeter or 2.5 liter straight six single turbo petrol engine with a maximum output of roughly 235 PS at 6,400 RPM. This is also a Series 1 of the Stagea, and there were both rear-wheel drive and all-wheel drive versions. Mods of this Stagea include a Japanese standard turbo timer, which allows the engine to keep running for a set amount of time after removing the key from the ignition, and lots of brochures. Pay attention because this is the icing on the cake if you sell something on Bring a Trailer. All the literature that goes with the car. Man, entire magazines just devoted to the Stagea? This English on the back window? That's real. Nissan described the Stagea as a prestige touring wagon. The Stagea features pillarless doors, reclining rear seats, a pull-out mat to protect the back bumper during loading and unloading of cargo, handle-folded seats from the trunk, a rear power outlet, and a dual sunroof option. This is starting to sound expensive, but one of the more striking bits is the relatively minimal amount of exterior badging, and the badging that is there is Stagea badging rather than Nissan itself. And look at that badge. Seriously, the Stagea badge looks like that weird S that everybody drew on their notebooks in high school. No one remembers where it came from, no one knows where they learned it, and no one knows who started it. It's just something that's embedded into our brains at birth, like hatred for sitting next to crying babies on public travel. Yes, I get it. They're babies. They cry. That's what they do. But taking a hard Duke and then wiping with handfuls of Owen Corning fiberglass insulation is something that I just do. But you don't see me doing it in
Business class.
It rides stunningly quiet. like a church after someone objected to a wedding. Steering is also surprisingly firm, like an old man's pill-assisted erection. I want to say it drives like a boat, but my expectation of driving like a boat is the Buick Roadmaster sedan estate. No wait, that's the wagon. The Stagea feels like the demon spawn of a Volvo wagon and a Honda Odyssey. It tries to be a sports wagon. It says it's a sports wagon, but this is a big car. This is a heavy car, and it's ginormous by UK standards. It was meant to compete with the Subaru Legacy touring wagon in Japan, which I don't know if we got here. I think the highest version of the Subaru Legacy we got was the Outback Legacy GT, or maybe the LL Bean edition. Competing with Subaru in the wagon department is a tall order by anyone's measure, and even taller for Nissan. And this is without even getting into the tariffs on Japanese imports, which made cars like this more expensive than they were actually worth. Now, you could argue that this had an appeal beyond the standard sports wagon because it was generally bigger than something like an Audi A6. But it's still hard to justify the cost. Because when you import a vehicle to the UK from Japan, which this is a JDM import, the cost is determined by Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs, or the HRMC. Once you tell them the car they're importing, they get sassy with you and say stuff like, well, why do you need this car? Then they'll tell you if you have to pay value-added tax or any duty fees, according to the HRMC website. These fees are determined by the total cost of the vehicle plus any accessories you bought with it and any delivery and extra charges. Now, the rates of the HRMC charge are determined by the type of vehicle and where it was imported from. Either way, you're probably going to be hit with some pretty hefty fees. Duty is 10% on used cars and 22% on pickup and commercial values, while the VAT, which is value-added tax, is 17.5% of whatever you paid for the car. Then there's the ownership tax that's based not just on CO2 emissions, but on the axles and the overall weight of the car. Then you need a whole slew of documents before the car can even clear customs, such as the bill of landing, the purchase invoice from the supplier, deregistration certificate, and the trader's unique reference number for any commercial transactions. However, the Japanese import scene in the UK remains thriving in spite of costs because the restrictions aren't as severe as they are in North America. Doug DeMuro had a good video on the process for legally importing Japanese cars into the United States and an accompanying article to go with it. It's more of an annoying bureaucratic process than anything else, but in the UK, as long as the car can pass the MOT and you have enough cash to pay the fees and taxes, it ought to be good to go. As opposed to the United States, where it's 25 rules means 25 rules means 25 years means 25 fears. I could dig owning something like this in the United States. It is big enough for Americans, but it's too hip. There is a weird way that Japanese try to have all their cake and eat it at the same time, like Goku eating a meal after a fight. This is sporty and luxurious, and it's high class, but it has street cred. It's a rich man's car for poor people. It's a street racer's car for dads. And it's none of these things. In the United States, we'd go crazy for this engine, but the owner says that no, they made a lot of RB motors, and this is one of many. As I said in the beginning, it's not magical, and it's not a Skyline Wagon, even though it kind of looks like it if you squint your eyes. The closest thing it resembles from a Yankees perspective is a BMW station wagon. That's what it feels like. But on the inside, it's very, very Nissan Maxima in here. Ugh. Very Maxima. But is the Stagea a car you want to go through all that trouble for? When they become legal in the United States, I don't know if I want to go through that rigmarole. I can't imagine saying yes to all that personally. But this is the car for which the phrase "to each his own" was invented. I mean, a lot of people in the UK really didn't get my fascination with the Peugeot 206. Everybody said, why did you want to drive that? And I said, because memory and that commercial I saw on E-Bombs World back in the day. But with the Stagea, people liked it, and Tom, our fixer, loved it. I remember him looking at the Stagea in the rearview mirror of the Abarth and said, ooh, that looks so imposing, I love it. And it does. The Stagea has an intense face. Everybody has interests that can be difficult to explain, but I think passion does a lot of the legwork. Sure, when people see that you love something, it makes them more curious to find out why. But sometimes passion itself is enough. That's all the explanation you need. It's sort of like having a relationship that none of your friends understand, but they see that you're happy, so they don't question it. Maybe they'll whisper behind your back about how you could do better, but if they're really your friends, part of them will see your happiness and hope that you won't ever need to do better again.
Stageas aren't super expensive because they're rich cars for the poor. Ain't it beautiful? You'll realize that the badge, it looks like the S from 7th grade. RS4 is so retrograde. What's your petrol grade?